Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, in the country, and whether you're watching this on the replays or not. I hope you're all doing well. Yeah, the weather has warmed up in Dallas, and hopefully that's the end of the horrible snow idea, which we do not agree with at all. Everything in Dallas just grinds to a halt. The minute there's this tiny little bit of snow, and it's just we don't do snow in Texas. We don't do. Hello from Richard, who is in Secret Destination X. He will be with me next Friday. I just checked with him, and he's definitely going to be here. We're going to be looking at Amazon services, and in particular, recognition. It does so many cool things. We did a webinar where we had it in before, but actually this time next Friday, not this Friday coming, but the next Friday. Oh, wait, is that right? Hang on, let me just check that. No, I tell a lie. Sorry, I'm completely crazy. It is actually this coming Friday. I've got so many webinars happening. It's all a bit, you know how it is. So he's going to be joining me this coming Friday, and we're going to be talking about Amazon recognition and a few other things as well. We're going to do some very interesting stuff for that. We've got people from all over the world as usual. I'm going to call you out bit by bit by making you appear on the screen here. If I keep saying hi, the more and more we get, and we are roughly doubling the number of registrations every time that we send out an email. So, you know, there's more of you watching, and we know we get a lot of replays and things like that. The replays for the Interbase one suddenly leapt a couple of thousand very quickly. So really cool. And hello, Boyan, who was on a previous webinar and doing well. I understand he has managed to dodge the horrible fires that went on in that area. Really caused a lot of devastation. But Boyan, great guy, and he'll be on again another time, I'm sure. Claudia, hello there. Andrea is not on today. Actually, that's entirely my fault. I decided to not hassle Andrea because he's always very busy, but this is about a product or a project, should we say, by Andrea Magni, who is Italian, which is why Claudia is saying hello from Italy. And Andrea's project is very interesting. I'm going to talk all about that in a moment as well. And there's so many of you joining. Well, the count is getting is crazy. Berlin and San Carlos. Hello, Terry. Hi, guys, says Harappa. Hey, mate. All right. From Aalen. I'm not even sure what that is. Oh, I'm guessing it's Germany because it says Plexbert GmbH. So that's it. So Harappa says, smiley face. Hello from Clarkston, Michigan. And I noticed there's one from someone in the UK earlier on as well. Oh, yes, it was Richard. But there's lots of you in the UK as well. Your background trophies seem to be gaining on you. Yasusakis, I'm glad you joined as well. Yeah, Stephen, you've spotted. I did say I'm going to be swapping my backgrounds around. And so if you look very carefully, there might be some new ones that appear. And they're all a little bit geeky. This one here is not so much geeky, but you know, I live in Texas and I've got a few of those hats because you've got to have them really. And believe me, actually, when it's sunny, you know, I don't really have a lot of protection on my head, natural protection, but those hats and similar hats, it's pretty much essential in Dallas in the summer to wear a hat. Otherwise, you can end up with sunstroke like that. I mean, sunburn in the middle of August takes about 10 minutes if you're not protected. It's pretty crazy. It's 105 Fahrenheit, which is 40-something degrees centigrade for all of August. So it's pretty good. Another place that's hot as well, Algeria. Yeah, it's pretty good. Hey, Tim. Hi there from Cedar Park in Texas. He's a local. Howdy, Tim. And I know how to say y'all, despite my very broad Texan accent. I'm sure you can all understand. I've lived in Texas 10 years now. I really enjoy it down here. So it's a great part of the world. Ron from Washington. Patrick who I'm going to mention later on. Patrick, I've got a slide about you in a moment. Hello from Lewisburg, Washington. Bom dia in Brazil is MacGyver. Dijon, France. Oh, Sylvian, I love France. I really do. Home of the country that knows how to cook better than anybody. I honestly believe that. Yasu, yes, Yasu Sakis. British Columbia in Canada, and Brussels, and Landerson Gomez. Hello, Landerson. Hey, you're a really, I've mentioned Landerson before, but for those of you who don't know Landerson does a lot of our stuff in Brazil for education. He's an extremely active guy in the education market in Brazil, and I called him out before in a Brazilian conference when I was over in Brazil. But, I can honestly say, if you ever ask yourself, why are there so many Brazilian Delphi developers? Landerson here is one of the reasons why. He is a force of nature. He's a really great guy. And by the way, Landerson, I noticed you talking about this new AI. It's very important that we mention this, DeepSeek, which Landerson's doing a webinar about, I think, or something like that. It's very important to understand our integration of AI in RAD Studio. We let you choose. We let you decide what information you give out. And we're still working on some of the features and making them a bit more useful. But, we know that when you sit down to code with RAD Studio and you're typing away that code, we're sitting there with you, metaphorically. We are sitting there as you type your code. And we understand that your program code is your secret blend of herbs and spices. It's your secret sauce, that you want to make sure that's your edge. Your competitive edge is what you put into your product. And the last thing we want you to do is get AI to train the AI with your code, and then it trains your competitor to be better than you, which is a risk, if it takes all your code. So we designed the AI in RAD Studio so that you choose, and it's off by default. Unlike some other IDEs and some operating systems now, actually, it is turned off by default. So you can use DeepSeek with RAD Studio, and we've got some information about that. We're going to produce a blog post about it. Antonio, a colleague of mine, is, I think, going to do a blog post about it. But we are testing it now because it's new. It took the world by surprise and took 500 billion or something horrible off of the stock market. But DeepSeek is a new kind of Chinese sponsored open source project for AI, and it does work with RAD Studio. So we're good. Skypic says Delphi is everywhere. Actually, we have a conference about that on the 14th of February, celebrating 30 years of Delphi, which is coming up soon. And in fact, I'm going to put the site webinar barcode up here. If you go to there and register, you'll make sure that you don't miss anything. But on the 14th, it will be 30 years of Delphi being around. And we're going to try and emphasize some of the history. If you look over my shoulder here, you can see a book that says Pioneering Simplicity. This is by Marco G from GDK. And I did a little bit of editing with it as well, but he wrote it. It's all down to him. And it talks about the history of Delphi, but also history of Turbo Pascal, which was 40 last year, and really is some fascinating stuff. We're hoping to make the 30th anniversary on the 14th of February to be something special. Lots of things in the fire, and it just depends on people's availability and things like that. But we do intend to show some people some projects around the world that are using Delphi, and you'd be very surprised at some of them. Some of them you probably bump into every single day and don't realize that it's Delphi. And there are people in the UK, I know for sure, because I wrote the programs. There's millions of people in the UK that actually interact with the Delphi program every single day, and they don't know it. That's the problem. We're too good at being reliable and stable as a language. Backward compatibility is very important for Rad Studio. We want your Delphi programmers from Delphi 7 or something like that to be able to be ported through to the latest version of Delphi 12.2 with the minimum of fuss and minimum of problems. And that is one of the things that is a very big deal for us. And this stability can sometimes be beguiling because people don't hear of the projects because they just work. And a lot of our projects that our customers have are closed source projects. They're commercial. There are apps in an app studio, or they're apps in the Windows Store, or they're used on a commercial environment. And so there's no source code in open source. And people look at open source projects of Python or JavaScript or something like that and go, oh, there must be much more. Delphi is not very popular. It's not true. There's several million people use Delphi around the world and on Pascal. So on the 14th, if you come along to that webinar, you'll learn more about that, and we'll show you some of the projects. We'll also talk to some of the people from the past of Delphi, and generally just have a celebration of it. So Linus says, "Bom dia, Ian." Yes, thanks. Bom dia, should I say? Thanks, Linus, and you're a great guy. I really like it. Florida Blanca, Santander, Colombia. Wow. Hello, Daniel. Yes, I know you. And not just Istanbul. Oh my God. And Andrea, I'm going to talk about you today. I apologize for not having you on. I thought originally I would just do it without you being on. If you're in the chat and you want to answer some questions, that's fine. But I don't want to put you on the spot by bringing you on unannounced. But I thought it was just better. I'm going to talk more about frames in general, but also TFrameStand. So Andrei is going to be kind of the subject of that webinar today, and he's watching on YouTube. Ukraine and Kyiv and Ukraine. Hope you're doing well. It's a difficult situation over there. Peru. Oh my, there's a lot of people. I'm going to be here forever if I keep saying hello. Nigel, hello from West Sussex, Southern England. It's always wet and windy in West Sussex. Dude, it's Southern England by the coast. It's going to be wet. I like it. I love that part of the world as well. Gregory in France, and Nigel says, yeah, okay. All right, well, look, a whole bunch of you there, a whole bunch of you. I am going to talk about that. Nigel is having a conversation with people. Oh, Ghana, and another one from the Ukraine as well. And Jeff is representing the state of mind in the land of confusion. I'm the king of the land of confusion. So, hey, good to see my loyal subjects are here. Einstein, are you in the universe? It's sometimes questionable, Einstein, whether Patrick is in here. Hello, Manuel. Hola, Manuel. Good to hear from you from Spain. Anyway, look, it's important to call out some of these people, the locations they are, just to make it absolutely clear. Delphi is used everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And in fact, the United States, where I live, is not the biggest markets worldwide. There are many people around the world using Delphi, very, very strong communities in all sorts of places. Like Brazil is probably the strongest, but Germany and France and Spain and Italy, Japan. Stephen claims the south of England is the most sunshine in the UK. Yeah, but Stephen, hear my accent? You can't fool me. I live in a sunny place, believe me. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, today's subject is about a product that is actually written by Andre Magny, who is in, as I said, in the chat on YouTube at the moment. And he has created something that is a very useful project. In fact, he's created several projects. I'm going to talk about it in a moment. I also want to, whilst we're on here, and we do this every webinar at the moment, but it's very important for you. And that is, I just want to remind you about the Delphi Summit. I know I go on about this every time, but it's going to be huge this year. Huge. And if you can, and I recognize if you live in Saskatoon or something like that, and or Colombia or somewhere, it's going to be very difficult for you to get there. But if you are able to, if your budget allows, and all the rest of it, I really recommend you go to the Delphi Summit. Now, I know I make it sound like this is an Embarcadero thing. It is not. It is GDK who are doing this. You're all familiar with Marco G from GDK, who wrote that book up there. But we are, helping cooperate. They are sponsored by lots of other companies as well, and MVPs and things like that. But this is down to the efforts of GDK, who are incredible. This summit, they hold it at a video games esports arena. It's like the nerds' paradise. If you're only going to go to one conference or one event this year, go to this one if you can. Okay, because I'll be there, so you can come up and tell me I'm rubbish, or pat me on the back, or just say hi and let's talk about Delphi. I'll be there in person. I'll be there for both days. It's a 2-day conference. Marco can too. Will be there as well, and so you get to talk to Marco and say hi and hang out with us. And we've got a few things to talk about, which should be interesting. But if you can possibly go to this summit, I really do recommend. Nearly all the people that you're seeing on this series of 30 webinars for 30 years of Delphi, you'll probably see them there as well. Richard Hatherall's going, I know that for sure. And I think Conrad might be going, we'll talk about some of this stuff later. We can do a little short video. But if you can do it, it would be great. Okay, what have we got here? Oh, a LinkedIn user. I can't put up comments that are not in a language I can read, just in case you're saying something like, offensive. So I apologize. Salim says, I love the background on your screen behind you. Can you share the picture? Actually, this is my office. This is not a background. This is a real office. This is actually where I work day in, day out. And I can prove that by let me pick this up and show you. It's a real background, because I used to be a DJ, so I've got a set of decks on there and hats, and the monitors are all real. So if you're talking about the background on the monitor behind me, then actually that is already shared. Oh, I see, on your screen, right? I understand. So that background is on the internet. Let me just find out what it's called. I might have to search for this. It's called something like Midjourney. No, I'll find this later and post it. It is a whole repository of images and I apologize, I'm probably looking weird at the moment because I'm looking at my screen and my camera's just slightly in a different place, but yeah. Let's see if I can find it, because I actually pushed to this repo myself. There we go, I found it. So let me post it up. So this is Delphi background. See, the benefit of having a live webinar is that you can actually have something added to it, and it's this one. Okay, and if you go to there, spell Midjourney AI Delphi images. So that he's talking about. How can I do this? There you go. He's talking about this image here, and in fact, not only that one, but the one that you'll see when I do my slides in a moment about TFrameStand. The one that is a different background on my machine that I'm talking to at the moment, and that is also on that site as well. And in fact, I've contributed a few backgrounds. So Salim, that's where the images are. So you can get those and download them. Fabrizio Bitti, from BitTime, a very, very good guy. extremely competent tech partner. I think he's an MVP as well, Fabrizio. I can't remember if we made you an MVP or not. But anyway, he's a tech partner. Really, really good guy, based in Italy. And Carlos, yeah. And Salim says, yes, that was the background. Is there any way we can get stickers for us to proudly put them on our laptop and advertise Delphi, which is awesome? Actually, Salim, we are talking about something to do with that on our 30th webinar, our 30th anniversary on the 14th. Because I get asked all the time about swag. And Patrick also says Svelte also maintains a ZXing library to read two-bit barcodes. Okay. So people ask about this T-shirt and, kind of swag in general, like, these images and stuff like that. And Fabrizio says he is an MVP. I thought you were Fabrizio. Sorry about that. But he's also, the guy from BitTime, hence name. I'm right. I'm not dreaming that, am I? I met him before, but very, very good MVP. But anyway, just to go back to the T-shirts and the swag, we do get asked this from time to time about stickers. And actually, if you meet me at a conference, I do give away stickers and badges if I have them. And there's only so many I can do at a time. And you can imagine when I go to the conference, I get swamped by a lot of people. I mean, in Brazil, I just literally couldn't walk more than 6 feet, before someone wanted to earwig me about something. But we are thinking about doing some swag. There's some complexities about copyright and liability and stuff like that, and also just the general logistics of organizing it. We get asked enough about it, so we think about it. So in answer to your question, is there any way to get some stickers? We're looking at it. Okay, I'd like to do that. JP says, don't forget about Taurus TLS. Actually, I haven't. In fact, I'm going to do a short video on that as well. Won't be a full-length webinar at the moment, but Taurus TLS is another GitHub project, and we're going to do something about that to make that surface as well. And there's actually Stephen says, could I ask you to pass on the email? We're just down the road from each other. Yes, I'll get that. Stephen and Nigel, can you email me? And then what we'll do is I will make sure that you two are hooked up. You should know my email address by now, but it's ian.barker@embarcadero.com. Email me with your details, and if you call for it and you say link us up, I'll reply with an email that links you both up. I'll do that for anybody, actually. I mean, that is my job, developer relations. And that's a good initiative. I started a Delphi community here in Ghana, and we'll like to get some of these. Yeah, okay. Thiago, hello, yeah. Bom dia again. Hello to Thiago, another good MVP. Look, guys, I could keep talking forever, as everybody knows, but let's a subject of today's presentation. So what I'm going to do, I've got some slides, I've got a demo. Now, I apologize to Andrea, who is actually watching us on the YouTube, but my demos are not as good as Andrea's because it's very slick. And because of the way the webinars work, it's very difficult for me to show things on mobile very easily. So I'm going to show a lot of what I'm going to show in Windows. And I'm also going to cover two subjects. One is frames and what frames do and why you would need to use them in the first place. And then we're going to talk about a product called TFrameStand. The good news about TFrameStand is it's completely free. And you can get it from Get It, and you can get it from GitHub and a few other things as well. And it's also covered in a book. So we're going to talk all about that. As usual, whilst I'm talking, at the moment, my layout is such that I will not be able to see your questions. So don't worry, I will stop at the end of what I'm doing, and I will get back to your questions. So if you want to ask questions, ask them in the chat. There are some MVPs in the chat, So they may well be able to answer your questions as we go along as well. In fact, there's a lot of MVPs in the chat. Yeah, it's a busy old time. I've started a community here in Ghana. I'd like to get some of these. Zoe, can you email me? ian.barker@embarcadero.com. That's fantastic. I'd like to find out more about the community in Ghana and what we can do for you. That's really great. Zoe, please make sure you email me. Ian.barker. You'll see it on the slide in a moment. That's really great. Patrick's posting links, but don't worry, I've already got that going. Right, so let's share my screen. And as I said before, if I don't reply to your questions immediately, don't freak out because I am still here, but I'm doing stuff in the background. I'm going to turn this QR code off because I forgot to do that with some previous slides, and then horrible things happen. So today, let us go through and start our webinar. By the way, this background that you see at the moment, this one here with these wonderful bits and bobs, that is another one that's available at this place, which, whoops, come on, oh dear. See if I can make this work properly. There you go. It's at this location, which is the one I showed you up earlier. But all the images are there, including, as you can see, some of the ones in the background. But there's some very, very cool backgrounds there. Look at these. These are awesome, aren't they? They're all AI generated. I've contributed a few. Most of mine have been to include some desktop backgrounds that fit at high resolution. So this is a, I think this particular version is 4K. But this screen I'm on is a 1920 by 1080. So it's a 1080p one. Okay, I'll hide my camera and then let's run some slides and talk about. Zoe's going to send me an email. Okay, and then talk about today's subject. Let me just resize a few things because PowerPoint is annoying, to say the least. Okay, so where's my controls gone? PowerPoint, you're there you go. Right, so what are we going to talk about? Well, this is part of the 30 for 30 webinars. And most of you know that because you've joined up and you've clicked on some email links and a few other things as well like that. But that's a series of 30 webinars to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Delphi. Internally in the company, most people think I'm completely insane to do 30 webinars. I personally think I should have done 60, but that's me. I've got enough content to go for thousands of webinars overall. Who am I? If you don't know who I am, shame on you. It means you've not been watching me before. My name is Ian Barker, the Embarcadero Developer Advocate. What does that mean? It's basically my job is to be part of developer relations. In fact, I manage that. If you take away the word developer and replace it with public, then I guess I'm also like the public relations type thing for developer tools in Embarcadero. So my job is to take what we do, explain it to the public and highlight the benefits of using our products amongst other things, but also to listen to feedback from you people. If you're unhappy about something or you're really happy about something and don't want us to change that feature, or you've just got, you know, some questions about, I don't know, would it be a good idea if I did this or something like that, theoretical things, or generally just to talk about software development, then you can email me at ian.barker@embarcadero.com. You can read about who I am and what I do at about.me/Ian Barker. And you know, I will answer your emails. I'm very, very busy. I get hundreds and hundreds of emails because I keep giving out my email address. But that doesn't mean to say you're not important. So please email me and I will reply usually within the hour and generally the same day. And some people freak out when I reply because they think it's some kind of advertising scam, but it really isn't. We want you to be confident that you know who we are. All of us, the project managers and program managers and even the general manager, we all give out our email because we want to hear from you and we want to know that, we're doing the right things. We don't want to be a black box. So that's a fact. Today's webinar is about a project that is nothing to do with me. It's actually created by another guy, and it's called TFrameStand. And in fact, I'm going to talk about TFrameStand, but also frames in general, because FrameStand allows you to use frames in a very useful way in your mobile apps. It also works for your desktop apps as well. But that's the main strength of it is for the mobile apps. So what is TFrameStand? Well, it's actually two components. It is TFrameStand and TFormStand. And the reason is that, as Andrea discusses in his book, which I'll talk about in a moment, he wanted to, he would have people say, oh, why is it frames? Why can't you do the same thing with forms? And so he ended up creating FormStand as well and rejig the code actually quite a lot. And it allows you to break down your user interface into nice little chunks of functionality. And then you can add some navigation and effects into the mix. But that's really only scratching the surface of the description of it. And we'll show you it in a moment, and we'll talk a lot more about what it is. Where can you get it from? Well, you can get it from github.com/Andrea Magni /TFrameStand. Okay, and that's the official GitHub repository. But if you have Rad Studio and you go to Tools and then Get It, you'll actually find that it's available in the Get It package manager. If you want to do that, tick the radio buttons that I've got there in the left-hand corner. So it says all, name, and then all in the categories. And then just type in TFrameStand and you'll actually come directly up with this particular component. It's a great component written by a guy who I've got a lot of respect for, and that guy is Andrea Magni. He is, I'm very jealous of him. He lives in Monza in Italy, so he's by that racetrack. And if you are unwise enough to follow him on Instagram, as I do, he'll post pictures every so often of the most glorious views of Italy. He lives in the most beautiful part of the world, really. And every so often he'll post a picture of him walking around or driving around the Monza track in Italy. And if any of you are racing fans, then you'll know what it is. It's really quite funny. You can find him on the MVP directory. If you go to our website, Embarcadero.com, and then go on resources and then MVP directory, which is one of the drop downs there, you can type in Magni, that's Magni, or Magni if you were pronouncing it badly and incorrectly. And there he is. He's got a website and locations, all the rest of it. He's a consultant. He does a lot of consulting. He's an author and an MVP and a programmer. As far as being an author is concerned, the reason I like Andrea is he wrote probably what I consider to be one of the best books I know about FireMonkey FNX. And I really mean that. I know a lot about Delphi. As you can imagine, I've learned a lot more over the year and a bit that I've done the developer relations job. But I thought I knew a lot about FireMonkey, and I'm a big fan of FireMonkey until I read Andrea's book and saw some webinars that he did and realized that actually he knows an awful lot more about FireMonkey. If you really want to know how to use FireMonkey properly, then I definitely recommend Andrea's book. tinyurl.com/FireMonkey book. That's a URL I created because the actual Packet people who are his publisher have very long URLs, lots of numbers in, which are difficult to type. But in this book, in the Delphi GUI programming with FireMonkey, he does actually discuss how to use FrameStand properly. And he also he discusses the philosophy behind why he created that and what the whole purpose of TFrameStand was, and why he thinks it's a good idea. And I'll touch on some of that in a moment. Speaking of Delphi books, if you want to find any Delphi book, then go to Patrick Prematin's site. And actually, Patrick is nearly always in the chat. He's here at the moment in the YouTube chat. And he's always posting things that say things like, here's the link, and here's now the link. And he's so useful. Last year, we made him the Spirit of Delphi Award winner for 2023-2024. And he keeps a fantastic website called delphibooks.com. So if you're not sure about where to find the FireMonkey book, or you're not sure about where to find, say, our book about HTMX and web stencils, or even how to get the Pioneer and Simplicity book that I mentioned earlier on, then go to delphibooks.com, run by Patrick, and he'll do that there. Patrick says, oops. There you go. He always gets shy about his picture. He's a great guy. I've got a lot of respect for both Andrea and Patrick. Very smart people, really good guys. So let's talk about the author of the TFrameStand, and that is Andrea Magni. And he's not, I don't know what it is about Andrea, but he must have a lot of time on his hands, because not content with creating TFrameStand, he also created a project and maintains the Mars Curiosity project. Now, if you're not sure what this is, there's a description on the screen from that actual website. It is a, do you know what? Just go there. It's how to build REST server with a very easy interface and all the rest of it. I really admire people that do so much, put so much effort into things like the documentation, because often on these open source projects, the documentation, the readmes and all the rest of it are often an afterthought. But in this particular case, as you can see, that's just a screenshot of the GitHub website, and that's what it looks like. Isn't it fantastic? That'll give you some idea of the kind of professionalism that you get from Andrea. So FrameStand relies on a thing called frames underlying it. FormStand you can use for, but FrameStand is specifically for frames. Now, if you're new to Delphi, or maybe if you're just used to coding in Delphi in a particular way, you might not know what frames are. They're kind of underused or slightly neglected in some ways, standard part of the VCL and FireMonkey component toolkit. And what they really do is they allow you to create your kind of a super component of your own, which contains other components and code. And it's really very useful to use frames. They do have some complexities, which is why I don't often talk about them when I'm talking about a kind of intermediate or introductory course on developing with RAD Studio. But the benefit of frames is that you can encapsulate or put together some functionality into one area of a frame, and then you can store that frame on your RAD Studio. We'll talk about how you do that in a moment, and then drop frames onto your project, and up come a whole bunch of ready-use functionality that you've created in a frame. This allows you to do a thing called the DRY principle, which is don't repeat yourself. So DRY stands for don't repeat yourself. So what it means is, if you've got, say, something complicated like a bunch of radio buttons and you know, some complicated image buttons and maybe even some images, or you know, a repository of images and you know, that kind of stuff. With frames, you can avoid having to do that over and over and over again on each form, especially if you're not using form inheritance, which is another thing that you should probably be considering using. The Pragmatic Program is a book by two authors called Andy Hunt and Dave Thomas. It's extremely popular. I'll show you a link later to it. But DRY is, you know, one of the key central features of that, which is you shouldn't keep writing the same code over and over again. And that's what frames allows you to avoid. How do you create them? Well, you create them by selecting File, New, Other in your project. and it'll depend on whether you're using VCL or FireMonkey, and I'm going to show you a FireMonkey demo. It'll come up and say, okay, you need to go there and type in the word frame at the top just to narrow down the list of options for the new other, and pick individual files and then FireMonkey frame. When you do that, what you create is it looks like a mini form. That's the best description I've got for it. And it really is almost like a form. It's a container, and you can drop a bunch of controls on there, and you can put a load of functionality and code behind it as well. And then store that on in your IDE or in your project and reuse it. And that's the whole point. You reuse it without having to redo that code again. A good example of this would be a settings page that has got different settings on it, but the actual functionality of how the settings work and buttons turning on and off and, different colors and things like that, you don't want to keep coding that over and over again. So it's easier to just, create on a frame. The most common thing I've seen used for frames is, say, a header on a page. Let's say you've got a top frame or panel that you repeat on every single one of your forms. You can deal with that in two ways, and you might have a status bar at the bottom as well. You can either create a base form and then inherit from the base form, or if the base form is going to differ between one form and another, and all you want is that header box, that header frame, or that status bar at the bottom of the page to be repeated without having to recode it, then you can create a frame and drop the frame on your form. And that's a very common use that people use frames for. There are other things as well, but those kind of ideas are what you use them for. So the reason I'm going to show you frames first is not everybody uses them or even understands them. So if I show you the frames first, then once I show you those, the TFrameStand will make a little bit more sense. So let's go ahead and swap over to do a demo. Okay, so let me turn my thing on here. So here I am. I'm still here, and I still see your chat messages. Let's open up Rad Studio, and the best thing that we can do at the moment is if we say, and I need to look over here, so I'm going to turn my screen off again because it always looks weird when I'm doing that to people. But if you say File, New, and then I'm going to say Multi-Device Application, this could be a what's the word I'm looking for? It could be a mobile application for iOS or Android, as you can see there, or it could be a Windows app, or it could be a Linux app, or it could be a Mac OS app. But we're just going to choose a blank application for now. So File, New, and up comes my application. So I'm going to save it for now, just because you should. And I'm going to call it, I'm going to create a new project for it and call it 30 for 30 frames. Go in there, save that, and then I'm going to call that project 30 for 30 frames. Oops. Not so easy when your neck is crooked around. Oh, what did I do wrong there? 30 for 30. 30 for 30 frames. Oh, I know. Yeah. Test 30 for 30. There you go. Okay, so let's imagine that what you want to do is have a toolbar or something that appears on each one of your forms that looks the same each time. Okay, so you're going to want that by saying File, New, Other, and then in here we say frame. Go down here individual files, FireMonkey frame, okay, because it's a FireMonkey project. Up comes my frame. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it test frame web 30. Why not? Okay. I'm going to put some components on it. So I'm going to put a radio button like this. I'm going to pick a slider, a switch, sorry, like this. And I am going to pick a button, okay, just for the sake of simplicity. Yes, Zoe said you can't start with a number. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why I renamed it. Yeah, Zoe's saying that because why wouldn't it say my project? Because it started with a number. It's just one of those things about valid identifiers in Delphi. And I'm like, oh, yes, of course, that's what I'm doing. You know, my brain doesn't always work at the same time as typing stuff. So there you go. Okay, so there's my frame. Okay, and I'm going to now my advice here is to rename your buttons and call it something else. So I'm going to call this frame button test 1, like so, and I'm going to call this frame test switch 1, and I'm going to call this frame radio button 1. I think that's going to be okay, isn't it? Let's think. Actually, no, I'm not going to call it a number because otherwise when I do the examples, it's not going to make sense. You're going to go, why has it got 2 numbers at the end of it? Right, so let's just change that for a second. 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and whoop, 1 there. And now on the button, let's just change the text to say, click me. And on here, if I say show message, click, like so. And so not a lot going on, but you get the general idea. So I'm going to save that. And because I want to make it clear what these are, I'm going to call it frames and then test frame 30. Okay. Now, at this moment in time, my main app, if I was just to run it as it is, like so. Hello, what did I do? Did I just crash it? Oh no, I crashed my app. How did I do that? Oh, that's frustrating. Yeah, managed to, I've got a message appearing off screen somewhere that I can't see. Well, that's embarrassing. I will have to do this. Yeah, I managed to break my screen for a second there. Sorry about that. I think the trouble I had, yeah, welcome to my world, exactly, yeah. You know, I don't normally get that problem. I crashed something earlier on. I was doing something with a test version of something, and it's not you, it's Windows. No, I think it is me, actually. You can't see it, but on my screen here. So just to explain what went on there, I actually have to save my desktop in a weird way. And I think I managed, yeah, and there's the frame. Okay, so the frame is there. Right, so I think this one time is going to work. How annoying. This is not what you want live on a webinar, is it, really? So over here is the app. And what I was trying to show you before the thing just went kaboom on me, and we all know it should happen one time on per webinar. Yes, actually, I normally don't get any problems. Normally, nothing crashes, but I have to say it's because of the way I'm saving my desktops. I did something dumb earlier on when I was testing something, and I made it so it doesn't work. But anyway, as you can see, just with the app as it is at the moment, there's nothing there. Okay, it doesn't have anything at all in there, because the reason is I haven't actually put the frame in there. Now, how do I do that? If I go into here, and you remember we created our frames, if I drop this on here, you see this name here, test frame 30. All of a sudden, I've got up the frame that we created. If you recall, this was in this file here, and this is what it looks like. Okay, I'm just going to save that. So if I come back and crash it again, I'll do it. And that's what it looks like dropped on the form. So I went into the palette and I typed in frames like that, and I selected frames, and then I picked a frame. Now, in fact, you can actually create multiples of these now. And you'll notice that I have 2 of these frames like that, and yet there is 0 code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this app for a second. And when it comes up over here, again, it's off screen because I have multiple screens set up. You can see I've got 2 lots of frames appear. Okay. And what's interesting is if I click on here, you can see that it comes up and says clicked. Okay. And I can independently, you know, these switches are independent. That is interesting because you know why? Where's the code? Where's the code that makes those buttons say clicked? And the answer is it is in the frame. Okay, so if we go back to the frame, you remember all we did was we created the frame with that functionality on, and it's put that in there. So I've already immediately encapsulated all the behavior. So let's say this is a really trivial example, but let's say that instead I wanted, you know, all sorts of complicated things to go on here, and maybe, you know, save some settings every time it was clicked or do some other behavior, then it can do it. Now, if I want to, you see here, if I change this button and instead get it to say this, okay, and someone's pinging me on the message as well. Why are you messaging me when you shouldn't be able to? Okay, yeah. There's someone sending me messages and they shouldn't be able to do that. So I'm going to try and silence them. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, right. So if I run the app, put it over here. Remember, the first button says clicked, but now what I've done is I've overridden that behavior and says I am not a click. Okay, so I'm a click, I'm not a click. Okay, and all I did was I overrode the default behavior of that button. Okay, now what about if I want the click to actually do something that was in the previous code? I'll pull this over and now click on here. Clicked. I'm not a click. So I'm getting the default behavior of the frame, and I'm also getting my overridden behavior. So frames are extremely powerful. And I'm just going to say that I don't know who it is that's sending me messages. Yes, I do. I see who you are. But you can stop doing that for a second. Just going to pause that person's messages. So this is what a frame does. Okay, it allows you to have default functionality that you can repeat, and it also supports inheritance. So, you know, the whole point of don't repeat yourself. If I had standard behavior that happened on these frames that I didn't want to have to code each time, let's say it was, instead of being one simple line of that, it was 1,000 lines of reorganizing settings and making things behave differently, then the frames is the way to do it. Now, you can do it in other ways. Like I said before, you can override the actual default form, and instead of being tform1, you could be you know, a base form or something like that, inherit from that. As there always is with Delphi, there's more than one way to do these things. Now, let's just close that for a second and tempt fate by opening a demo that I had earlier, which is this one. So I have here a frame in my project. My frame looks like this. You'll notice it's not styled. Okay. Yeah, Fernando is saying for most of the time in a big project, frameless does not show any elements. Remove and re-add the frame solves this issue temporarily. Anyway, frames are cool. Actually, I believe that's something that we've been addressing in a recent update. So you'll notice the form is not styled. Okay, the frame is not styled, but the form itself is. And in fact, I have two style books on here. The way that I get those style books is I go in here, double click on it, and then I choose an appropriate style. So I chose, I downloaded it from Get It and got the Impressive Dark and loaded it into that book. And then the other one is in here. I chose I went into here, said open a style, and I chose the Impressive Light. Okay. That means that I've got two styles. On my form, you'll notice that I've pointing the style at style book 1. Okay, so that's why it's dark. Okay, if you look at the project at the moment, there's two frames there. Okay, and they're side by side. So what I'm going to do is just run this and just show you some other behavior that happens with frames, which is all of the frames are styled. You remember I showed you in the there that the frames themselves are not styled. And in fact, I can hit this button and it says I am the frame button, and that's the code executing in the frame. I'm button 2. This is not the code from the frame demo. This is the overridden code. So still the same frame information, you know, still independent completely. And when I change the value, it comes up and says I'm the slider. And when I change the value here, it still says the same thing. I'm the slider in the inherited behavior here. But if I click on this button, it says I'm button 1. So it doesn't show the same default behavior, but I can also dynamically change the style. So because of 2 style books on my app. So the frames behave like they're part of the app, which of course they are. And all of the styling and everything works in them. Okay. So I don't, oh, and the other point was as well, if you notice on my form, I've got 2 frames there that I've dropped on. But in the actual running app itself, here, which I will drag over again, you see there's a 3rd frame here, and it's probably easy to see in the light mode. You see there's a 3rd frame here. That third frame is created dynamically. So you don't have to visually create frames. And in fact, in many cases, it's easier not to, but to do them dynamically. And the way I do that is when the main form runs, it creates an instance of that frame. Okay, it has to give it a unique name because all components must have unique names. Okay, and the parent is it's belonging to this form. Okay, and I'm just choosing to put it in a particular position. I can, dynamically move it around. I can use T-flow layouts, T-align layouts, and stuff like that to align the frames around, and then I make it visible as well. But actually, it would be visible by default. But that's what I do. And when the form is destroyed, I make sure that I get rid of that frame. So the frame is just a private field there in the component. A bit of code is when I click on this button and only this button, this piece of code executes, which is to change the style. But frame button 2, which is this one, executes some different code, even though both of these buttons are created by the frame code, not the program code. And actually, Delphi Modern Philosophy of Programming says it's called Visual Frames Inheritance. Yeah, it's visual inheritance, but yes, I understand what you mean. Same difference, and it's good. And then the third frame, which is created dynamically there, I'm actually not assigning any code to any of the buttons. I could do, so I'd say frame 3 dot something or other, and I can create methods in here on that frame to do things. So I can create some public declarations and do things on here, but because I'm not choosing to override any code, the buttons are even by default on that third diagram. So when I run it and it comes up over on my other screen, I'll bring it over here. This is a default behavior. This is a default behavior. This is the default behavior. This is overridden behavior. This is the default behavior. And this is overridden behavior. So extremely useful. And once you get to grips with it, because it is a bit of a kind of mind meld, when you're doing it, it allows you to do this, which is to have this functionality completely separated out. Now, these are simple examples that I'm showing you in the webinar. In real life, you can do much more complex things with frames. And if you've got, like I say, just a header bar or something like that in an application. So let's say you had something up here, which was a header that was repeated on every form, but the forms themselves were different. It might be easier to use frames than to use form inheritance behavior. But if you want to get it so that every time the form loads up, it, saves its settings to an ini file or to the registry, then that's probably better handled at the inheritance level. So you would create a base form, let that do all the savings of settings and aligning of code and scaling and all the other crazy things you might want to do. But if it's visual to do with this, then basically you're creating a component of components, and it's very, very useful. So let me just close this for a second. And I see quite a few questions. I'm just going to drink a drink of water for a moment. And by the way, if you're new to watching our webinars, every single webinar that we've got in this series, if you open your welcome page, which is this one here, and you can get to that by going to view and then welcome page. Okay, you can customize this and put all sorts of extra bits and bobs in there, but you will also find a learn tab and the most recent webinars, and there is a limit to how many we can actually fit on here, but all the most recent webinars will automatically appear in your feed there. So if you're watching this and you went, oh, I never saw about the best embedded database, you can go there and it will be one of the webinars in this 30 for 30. And Zoe says, good question, actually. I guess a frame can contain another or several frames. Yes, it can. I didn't show that, but one frame can have other frames in it. And those frames can also have other frames in it. It's like turtles all the way down. You can inherit, and keep going. Be careful what you do with frames, because they can get you in a bit of a muddle. ECO 6, I'm going to try and pronounce it that way, says frames are super useful. Absolutely, I totally agree. But the warning I would say is, if you are a novice developer, there are a few things, there are a few gotchas, and they can trip you up if you're not sure. Like, particularly when you create dynamic frames or drop frames on, you've not named them carefully, you can get things like properties coming up that say, oh, you did this property wrong, or something like that. Or if you've got functionality where you've got a component on your main form that's called something, and you happen to have one on your frame that's also called something, you can end up with a situation where it says, well, you've already got a component called, button 7, and you're trying to create a new one by dropping a frame on there. It gets a little bit confusing, but it's not that difficult. Believe me, I always say this: if it was that difficult, I couldn't do it. Right, so let's have a look at Andrea's project. Andrea, I don't know if you're still here in the YouTube, but if you are, this is Andrea's stuff. So if you go to the website, which I showed you earlier on, and in fact, I'm going to put it up, which is this site, Andrea's TFrameStand site. And if you're not good with QR codes, then I think I've got one here. Or if you go to here, either of these projects, or just go into Get It, and in Tools, and then Get It Package Manager, and then, as I said before, if you just type in frame, TFrameStand, if you do that, it'll come up with the TFrameStand in there. Now, I installed it from GitHub because I was wanting to make sure I got the one that I wanted, but you can just hit installing it and install it for you automatically. It's free and open source, and every version of Rad Studio can use it that is available at the moment. So Community Edition, not a problem. Professional, Enterprise, Architect, works with all of those. So go ahead and knock yourself out. Let's just hide those so that I can go back to my demos. 1 second. What have we got? QR codes. So let's look at some demos. Okay, so I think probably the easiest one is this one, I think. I should point out, I'm going to do a bit of a disservice to Andrea's demos here, because many of these demos are better on mobile. Okay, and I'm going to show these on a desktop. Mohammed says, in FMX, we cannot embed forms inside forms like we did in VCL. Not true. TFrameStand will do that. If you go to the same website, TFrameStand will allow you to embed forms. So you can do that. So I'm pleased to say, good news, yes, you can. It's not the same as VCL, but it's similar. So as I was saying, the demos that Andrea have done are better shown as mobile, but due to the way the webinar works, it's a little bit tricky for me to actually demo it. I'm getting a new phone soon as well. I think an Android S25 and an iPhone Pro something or other. So I probably will do more demos because I'll have a cooler phone. But what this does is this shows you how TFrameStand works. So this allows you like some behavior that is embedded and isolated using TFrameStand, but you can close the component. Doesn't really do much, and you sort of think, well, that's a bit boring, to be honest, and it is, but you get the general idea. So if I go and look at some of the other ones, when it starts to get really interesting is when you have something like this one. Now, where is it? Forget which one it is. not that one. This one. There you go. So it starts to get really interesting, particularly on mobile, when you've got projects like this. I apologize for my dog; he's probably making weird things in the background. So here's a list box. Now on a mobile app, obviously it looks a lot cooler. Oh, Andrea says he's here. Hello, Andrea. Good. I'm glad you're here. So here's one of the other features of FrameStand, which is the fact that you can change how the animations and things like that work. So let's just choose one that says right to left. So it relies on some action lists in his code. And if I say show the action, here's a material button that is slid in from the right to left. And if I say hide it, it hides again. Pretty cool. Like the little bounce there, proper kind of, behavior for a mobile app. Same with slide up and down. If I choose this one, bing, a bong, bing, bong. But the one that is really, really cool is this behavior here, which I really like. And that is a material button that's showing. And again, this is the kind of behavior that comes for free with FrameStand. Now, lots and lots of other demos to show you lots of other behavior that it can do. This one is my own particular favorite, which is, let me just move my mouse over here. And this is using 3D, a 3D animation. Isn't that cool? Now, what's happening there is it's animating this frame. This is a frame with a label control on it and a button. And when the buttons are clicking, all it's doing is opening. It's calling an action of the FrameStand component, which I'll show you in a moment. And it is making the component animate. It is using FireMonkey 3D. I'll just let my dog outside. She's making lots of noise. There you go. I have two dogs. One of them is very big and floppy. But it's using, again, standard behavior of both FireMonkey 3D, but also FrameStand. And it's very, very cool. Now, there are lots and lots of examples, and I'm only really going through them, badly. But Sakis says, I have your book, Andrea, great book. Yes, I'm going to talk more about the book in a moment. Because that's something that's very interesting, his book. But this shows another behavior of FrameStand, which is the ability to have responsive resizing. So you can see these bars here, and you can see it says XS if you've got a nicer resolution. As I resize the screen, which would be the same as if it was on a different device, so different, mobile device or different PC screen or something like that. Patrick says he likes the sound effects when I went boo, woo, woo, like that. You can see as we go along, as we get bigger and bigger, the large responsive pattern is here, medium responsive pattern, small responsive pattern, extra small. Okay, and you might say, well, what exactly do we get with that? Well, if I double click on this button here, it opens up this really great little table here with a load of information on it. And as I resize it, you'll see that the button at the bottom resizes and shows the information. Okay, but as I close it down, so there's less ability to show information, you'll see now that it's resized to only show the view like that. And these bars are a very clever way of just showing that each of the responsive views comes into play. Okay, and he does that in the IDE, or in the code, should I say, by when it starts up. Oh, let's pull that actual code up rather than the other code. By when after the frame has been constructed, he sets some breakpoints, which is the responsive breakpoints for the frame stand, and then he labels them and he does some other things as well. But he also does a little bit of code to find these things. And yes, he's even got code that behaves differently depending on whether it's Windows and whether it's Android. As I've said, add a demo than this because he shows it on mobile, but it's responsive. There are so many good things that this does. It's ridiculous. I mean, even the demos themselves are great. I think this is one. I did find one that didn't work on desktop, and I think that's possibly because of the version I was using. I think this works. Oh yes, it does. Sorry. So a lightbox effect, text with a lightbox effect, a data set with a lightbox effect. You can go on forever. Really, it's not really going to do much good you watch my demos because, as I said, I can't really show them that easily on mobile. If you go to the website and download it or go to get it and do it yourself, you can get some of the demos running on your machine, but also go through Andrea's book. I really recommend that book, whether you're going to use FrameStand or not. Read what it does. He will teach you things about FireMonkey you did not know FireMonkey can do, and I can assure you that FireMonkey is a fabulous framework. I think it's probably one of the best ways you can create applications that look good on Windows, but also then you've got the opportunity to go over to Mac or something like that. In last year's end of year webinars, we did have some webinars with font application, and as you showed, because he used FireMonkey, he was able to reuse 90% of his code, and I have an app now that works on name that, but it works on Windows and it works on Mac, and that's quite an achievement. So this just shows you actions where there's a countdown timer and so on and so forth. Loads and loads and loads of demos. As I said, I've not really shown it, to its best kind of in its best light, but it does, some great stuff. Let me see. I think this is. No, this is not the one example. I'll show you the other example in a minute. I think this is not one. No, that's not the one. Hang on. Simple Wizard project. Right. So this is another behavior that FrameStand supports. And it kind of makes sense if you think about how most mobile apps work, and which is creates a wizard kind of UI metaphor. So if I say I want to go to this step, I go and do something in here, and I say, I don't know, 1 or something like that. And then if I call the step button, what it does is it will then show the next frame in the sequence based on the and you can have a button that steps forward and a button that steps backwards. So if on your typical wizard, you will have to do something in this stage, and then you maybe go back as well. But this is just stepping forward into step 3, and I can type anything in here, but I'm typing 3. And step 3 is the final version. So step 1, step 2, step 3, all built-in functionality built into into the FrameStand code. And again, the way he does this, I think, is absolutely remarkable. So that's what I wanted to show you for today. I also want to explain something else as well. When I talk about publishers and things like that, I want to make it absolutely clear. Packet, which are Andrea's publishers, even before I started working for Embarcadero, I bought these books. Okay, I paid for these with my own cash. Embarcadero did not give me some stipend on them. I actually went and bought myself. I'm just kicking my other dog out and now wants to leave. And Packet, P-A-C-K-T, are fantastic. Primoz Gabrieljic he's a great author. This is Andrea, and but there are also hands-on design patterns, Expert Delphi by Pavel Glowacki, who unfortunately passed away, and Daniele Tetti, who is also in the chat, or he was a moment ago, I think. I'm just trying to make it clear that these books are great. Now, I am not going to show you all of this because I don't want to breach Packet's copyright, but this is actually the e-book view, and they've got a really great e-book reader, by the way, Packet. Honestly, absolutely fantastic. But the e-viewer allows you to do things like summarize it. But here you can see Andrea discusses all about TFrameStand, and that's in his book. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. If you are interested in FireMonkey, then you should definitely go for it. I'm going to pull up the slides again and go back to that book so that you know where it is. Let me just say from current slide. So that's the book about frames, and it's by Andrea Mani, who, as we said, is in the chat. If you can't remember what the URL is or you can't find it, go to delphi-books.com, which is the next slide as well, and it's got it listed on there as well. But Andrea Mani, Delphi GUI programming, FireMonkey, FrameStand, great project, really love it. Andrea, I know you're listening. I apologize for not having you on. I'll have you on in a future webinar another time because I failed miserably there, didn't I, in getting you to come. But let me just stop sharing now and go back to the camera. Here I am. So the summary of what I wanted to show you and discuss was, you must remember that although Delphi is, as Patrick points out, Packet, P-A-C-K-T.com, they have subscriptions and you can buy all the available books and read all of them. And their subscriptions like $20 a month, I think, and it's all you can eat. You read every book. But someone's asking, Helios asks, is FrameStand for FMX only or maybe for VCL too? As Andrea says, straight from the horse's mouth, I'm glad he asked that question and answered it. It's FMX only. The reason is that FMX, if you read Andrea's book, which I plugged a lot and said you really should, you'll find that FMX has got some capabilities that VCL doesn't. VCL is great. If you are writing Windows-only apps and you're only ever going to have a Windows app, then the VCL is close to the metal, hardcore, optimized, does everything you could ever want for Windows framework, the VCL. And it's been around for many years. It's very, very popular. But if you want to go further, or you might go further, or if you want to do something really, really, really cool with your apps, like animations and shadows, and you've seen me do apps that have got drop shadows, and if you've seen the WoW app where there's a sunrise that comes up over a forest and a sunset, and then the cloud comes in, there's a weather app, that's all FireMonkey. No code, zero code to do all of that behavior, completely zero code. And a lot of that behavior is described in Andrea's book, because FireMonkey is one of those things where people always go, I don't know whether I want to use FireMonkey. And it's fair to say, a good few years ago, there were some rough edges on FireMonkey. But with 12.0 of Rad Studio, we introduced Skia for Delphi, incorporated the Skia project into it. And that really gave a massive boost to FireMonkey's quality and performance. And plus, that project has been worked on. The FireMonkey quality has been significantly improved over iterations of versions as well. And FireMonkey, to me, is one of the best frameworks available, because if you write your Windows app and then suddenly go, you know what, should we do this for Mac? Why not try and appeal to Mac customers? You know, if you create a CRM app or a ERP app or a word processor, rich text editor, you name it, and you write it with FireMonkey, you can make that same app from Windows work under Mac. And actually, you can currently, it's possible to get it to work under Linux as well. There's a little problem because the person that was responsible for that project passed away unexpectedly, and we're trying to fix that. But we want it to come back. Everybody wants FireMonkey back for Linux. But really, the main game in town with regard to commercial projects is Windows and Mac. And if you're going to write an app, why only have it work on one operating system? Why not have it work on a Mac? And then, if you wanted to, with FireMonkey, you can also target iOS and Android as well. And with TFrameStand, as I've shown there, really badly, and Andrea's book and his demos show it much better. With TFrameStand, you're adding a dimension to that. Patrick says, and I kind of disagree with what you're saying. I understand what you mean, but as Patrick says, VCell lacks good animation and shadows. Yeah, what it is it doesn't have animation and shadows by default. You can get components that do that, and actually it's very easy to create a VCL app that has shadows effect on it. But FireMonkey includes animations and shadows by default, and all sorts of other effects like bevel effects and cartoonify effects. If you want to turn your whole user interface into a pencil drawing, you drop a component on it, does it. You want to make a blurry effect on an image, so you want to blur out an image. Drop a component on and it does it, or create it in code. It's the same thing, but it's literally a component to do that. No code, zero code. The more you use FireMonkey, the more you realize you're not using code for some things you used to do for effects and things like that. I really like FireMonkey. I'm a very big fan of it. I like VCL as well for different reasons, but FireMonkey is the absolute, it's the way to go. If you buy that book or subscribe to Packet and get that book, you'll learn a lot more. I can tell you, I know what I'm doing when it comes to designing apps, especially user interfaces. I specialize in user interfaces, and that book taught me some stuff as well. And by the way, I have no relation here between Andrea and myself. I won't get any kickbacks or commissions or anything. I just mean it. When I recommend something like this, it's not because someone's paying me to. It's because I genuinely mean that I think they're great books. That book taught me a few things. You've seen me use them. If you watch the Not a Hot Dog webinar, where we were creating a spoof of the Silicon Valley TV show where they had a Not a Hot Dog app, there was a really terrible animation in there of these dots spinning. And I recreated that with no code because of a chapter in here that told me how to do that in that book. So I learned something from there. And I don't care how good you are. I've been doing this for, 40 years as a developer and 30 years with Delphi. And I still learn something every single day. And as Andrea says, animation is another key point for some visual effects. Yes, the FrameStand includes the ability to do all these animations and transitions. It also, I didn't show things like gestures. There's a demo that he has that's like a peak of a bottom tab. So you've got a layered form, and then on the bottom of the form is an area that allows you to peek underneath and go, oh. And you know how you on most mobile apps you can drag up and see something underneath and pick it. He has a demo that supports that kind of gesture as well. So Really, really good. FMX is so handy when you want to get away from the standard operating system look and feel and free yourself from graphical constraints. Yes, but also we include a lot of styles, and those styles will actually adapt and allow you to use a standard Windows style. But actually, really, the trend in Windows nowadays is to not look like a Windows app, but look like a cool app. And if you pick 5 different apps that are popular in Windows, you'll find none of them look the same. The only ones that look the same are ones written by Microsoft for the operating system, and even those don't look exactly the same. Like the calculator app, for example, does not look like the weather app. The weather app is used by Microsoft to test out some of their different look and feel. But yeah, the trend is not to have things looking like the operating system, but to look individual and cool, and that's what you get with FireMonkey. Some of that in there. Make FMX browser compatible. Yes, there are some component sets that will allow you to do that, but it is something that it's not designed for the web. Really, it's designed for operating systems. However, there are some things going on, and also you've seen the Web Stencils project, the TMS FNC components. There are Unigoon components. Lots of those components do a lot of these things, so it's good. Anyway, I hope that was useful. I want to make it clear, my demonstration of TFrameStand is by no means showing you anything good about TFrameStand. Search for it, look at Andrea's videos, which are far more comprehensive and far more useful. And Andrea is saying, thanks for your kind words. Andrea, I don't say that, I always say this about, if something's horrible, I don't mention it. But if I say, that someone's good, I mean it. Because I know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of developers. And Andrea, you're one of the guys, as you know, I've told you before multiple times, you're a smart guy. The Mars Curiosity project is another one of Andrea's projects, and it's really good. And, it's a great thing. Patrick says it's very practical for developing games and applications with a bit of graphics. Yes, FireMonkey is one of those things that's really, really good. So you're saying this... the IDE should be rewritten in FX. Actually, let me just talk about that for a moment. The problem is not rewriting the IDE, the visual part of it that you see. Because, yeah, you could do it in FireMonkey and it would go cross-platform like that. The trouble is that what the IDE does is much more than that, like driving the compilers that compile projects. So, for example, if you take the example of Rad Studio, which is Delphi and C++ Builder. C++ Builder has just really finalized the CLang or Clang implementation for that compiler. And it's a huge project, and it takes C++ Builder into a whole different realm. All of a sudden, C++ Builder has gone from being an okay IDE with a good compiler that was respected but getting kind of old, to using the latest cutting-edge compilers for C++, the CLang or Clang compiler that can compile one of the biggest projects you can find, which is OpenCV as a C++ project. To do that, we have to, in the IDE, integrate lots of different things, like types of messaging between the Clang compiler, the debugger, the way the debugger works and talks to the debugger in behind the scenes, the way that we can do registry views of, if you press pause and a debugger window opens up and you can go into the register view of the CPU, or you can go and stop on a breakpoint and view a breakpoint. All of these require rewriting for a cross-platform IDE, and almost certainly different code for one platform like Mac to the platform for Windows. So I absolutely agree. We would or could or should possibly rewrite the IDE in something like FireMonkey. But it's not as straightforward as just making the visual parts of the IDE work on a different platform, because there's a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes that are the nuts and bolts, the engine of what an IDE does. Even, LSP, for example, which there's a lot of work going on the quality of the LSP, but even how that LSP works, it's a technology that has a defined interface to work, but actually working behind the scenes on a Windows machine is very different to working behind the scenes on a Mac machine or a Linux box. The same way of just simply creating an executable, a deployment. If it was a Mac IDE, deploying to Windows would be the reverse problem. So at the moment, when you hit compile and then create an executable and run it, there's nothing really to do extra for the IDE. It just creates a file and then launches it and creates a debug hook and talks to it. Debug hook being the appropriate thing here. But if all of a sudden the IDE was running under Linux or running under Mac, the reverse would happen, and now you would need PA server, which is for Windows, and the Mac would then have to create a debug hook back across PA server, back to the Windows machine, and trying to communicate with the Windows machine as the IDE on the Mac being the primary controller of that conversation. And so it can be done, but it is not as straightforward as people think it is. It's actually very, very complicated. This is not an excuse. I'm not trying to give you an excuse. My job is not here to give excuses. My job is to try and explain things to people so that they get it and they understand. But yes, I would love us to rewrite it so that you could just open up the IDE on anything you wanted: Linux, Mac, Chromebook. I love Chromebooks. I have one sitting out in my other room. I'd love it to run on a Chromebook, for example. That would be so cool. It made my life so much easier. 10-hour battery life on a Chromebook, fantastic. But it's not as simple as it looks. So yeah, people always say, "Oh, you can rewrite it." He's doing his smiley face. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do we have any pointers for you about doing drop shadows on a T panel in the VCL, Ian? Yes, I do. Okay, so there are components that will add drop shadows to a T panel, but the easiest way to do it is usually to have the T panel on top of either another T panel, or usually to have it on a paint box. And so what you would do is draw your paint box or a shape like a T rectangle. You do a grad fill that is whatever the shadow color is. So let's say it's dark gray, and the grad fill goes to the right hand side of the shape, goes to the button color or whatever your background or your form is. You drop your panel on and then make it so that you've got margins that make your panel smaller. It's not easy, and in FireMonkey you would just drop a shadow on and it would go, but you can emulate the idea of shadows. I do it all the time. With labels, it's even easier. With the label control, either you can use raise labels, which are, Ray Konopka's add-in pack that includes shadowing in it, or you can make the two labels transparent. So you drop one label on, and you drop another label on top of it. You move the first label slightly to one side, and like 1 or 2 pixels to one side, and have that as the primary color. And then the label behind it, you change to whatever shadow color you want, dark red or dark black or something like that. And then you've got the effect of a label control with a shadow. There are ways to do it that actually will redraw the font with a shadow. You can use Skier for Delphi, and the Skier label has got all sorts of effects that you can apply in the VCL, and we'll do shadowing and right to left and rotating it in different angles and things like that. But for panels and things like that, it's easier to just cheat. It's as simple as that. And I'll actually probably do a webinar. I think I've got a webinar coming up about UI, and I think I should probably show that Animation in the VCR is also possible with performance as well, not impossible. I think that's a question. I think you're saying, can you do animation in the VCR? Not really. Not the same way that you can with FireMonkey. The VCR doesn't include that form of animation. There are some components that support animation, and you can even download some components that do it. But there are other things that do it. Ron says, thanks, Ian. Thank you, Ron. I really appreciate you coming. And we've got lots and lots of questions on this one. Patrick says, download it from Get It and play with the demo. Yes, that's definitely what you should be doing. Will the new C++ builder work with Unreal Engine? Joe, I can't answer that question because I don't know. I know that there are two guys that are tech partners who work in the games industry, and I know that Whole Tomato, who also occasionally do some things for us. Well, I do developer relations for some of our other idea brands. Whole Tomato have got some games programmers in there because the Visual Assist was very widely used by the games development industry, which, by the way, was decimated a little while ago. Lots of game developers lost their jobs in places like Microsoft and a few other places as well. But I don't know is the short answer. It's the honest answer. But I know that there are lots of other engines available. Will it work with Unreal? I don't know. It's Clang. And so if it's Clang compatible and it's the right version of Clang, then try it and see. I don't know, but it can compile OpenCV, which is a very challenging project, and it compiles it without errors. That in itself is probably an indication that it probably can do it. I don't know. I'd be interested, Joe, if you do find out what the answer is to that, can you email me, ian.barker@embarcadero.com. I'd like to put that to David Millington, who's the project manager in that area, and Nuno Castro, who is also project manager for Visual Assist as well, amongst other things, and a few other things as well. But I'd be interested to know the answer, because that could be kind of cool if it can do that. And is there a trick for us only English speaking to use the YouTube videos? So a trick for us only English speaking to use the YouTube videos. Tim, rephrase your question. I don't understand what the question is. Do you mean Andrea's videos? Because he does them in English and Italian, I think. Tell me what one you mean. Yeah. Oh, I see. Actually, Patrick has said the same thing. Patrick says, can you explain what you mean? I guess it's... I see. YouTube videos are in Italian. I don't speak or understand. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what he's saying is, and as Andrea got some videos in English, the answer is yes. I think Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've got videos in English as well. I'm sure I've done at least one webinar with Andrea in the past where he's done it as well. But we'll do it. YouTube can translate via closed captions. Yes, it can. But it's not available on each video. So yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. Well, look, thanks once again to Andrea, who I didn't get on, and I will do in the future. Andrea, don't worry, I'll get you up on a webinar in the future. I don't like putting people on the spot, particularly if English is not their first language, but I know Andrea does speak very good English because I've been on webinars with him in the past. Once again, if you want to know more about it, if you've got any interest at all in FireMonkey, you should get this book because it's a great book. And if you're at all at a loose end in June, and if you're in Europe and you can, find a way to do it, go to the Delphi Summit. DelphiSummit.com is the place to go. It is going to be the #1 event this year, and as I said, I'll be there, so you can come and tell me, oh, your webinars are rubbish, or oh, thanks a lot, or something like that. Just depends on whether I've annoyed someone sufficiently at the time. It's so forth. But I'll be happy to meet anybody and everybody, and I will make time for all of you and sit down and have a chat. And let's talk about Delphi. That's what the summit's there for. We can keep having these webinars, and we will keep doing it. But the summit is where you get to actually meet some of the faces that you know. Patrick probably going there, I imagine. Richard Hatherall, who's on this Friday, he's going, and Marco Cantu, the guy for Delphi. Someone once called him the god of Delphi, and then I said, well, what does that make me? And they said, you're either the Jesus of Delphi or the John the Baptist of Delphi, which is insulting to Christians. But John the Baptist, I don't like the idea of being John the Baptist of Delphi, because he had his head cut off and handed to someone on a plate, and I don't want my head cut off and handed on a plate. So. But I think they're trying to say, "Oh, you're the preacher" or something. That's funny. But anyway, look, thanks for joining us, and we're back on Friday. And this Friday, we are looking at recognition from Amazon. We've done a very brief one before, but this Friday, we're going to go much more in depth. Richard's got some new developments that you can get and download from Get It that covers some of the important things in Amazon. We'll talk very briefly about those, and that is the I Am service, which is the Amazon kind of identity management service. I think that's what they call it. I'm sure it's I Am. Richard can correct me on Friday. But we're also going to show you detecting objects in pictures, still images, but also detecting objects in moving video, and also getting context from those images and videos as well. So, if it looks at a backdrop like mine, it might identify, and it'll tag things as well. So it might identify, say, Centurion helmet or a Spartan helmet, but it might also do something like identify a samurai sword, for example, or a hacker mask, or teddy bear, or something like that. And Union Jack, as someone pointed out before, which has always been there, but someone thought I'd added it. But that's what recognition can do, and it can also look at someone like me and say, "Oh, it's a male." It can guess my age, hopefully reasonably accurately. I'm not saying I'm 105 or 20 or something, but also it can get the idea of whether I'm happy or sad. So if I'm smiling like this, it may say that I'm happy. But if I'm walking along frowning and looking unhappy and generally gesticulating, it can come back as angry or things like that. So recognition is incredibly clever service. And like I say, if you've seen the webinar before, we're doing more this Friday, much more in depth. And Richard Hatherall will be there. Let's see. We've got a few more questions. There's not a question. I do animations VC like FMX does is not possible. Okay, yeah. Stephen says, great couple of hours, Ian. Thanks. Yes. It's good. Patrick's answering some more questions. Zoe says, thanks. This was insightful. I'll send you an email. Thanks, Zoe. And thank you for representing in Delphi in Ghana. And I say this as well, that I actually do write for the Blaise Pascal magazine as well, which is this. And the reason I do that is it is a shared magazine between Free Pascal and some of the other Pascal variants that are out there, and Delphi. And I want you to use Rad Studio, and I want you to use Delphi, because obviously I work for Embarcadero, but I believe it's the best option for most people. But I accept that some people choose not to do that. And Free Pascal serves slightly different kind of area of markets to Delphi. And so there are some benefits. We do different things. But Blaise Pascal magazine covers all of those. And it's edited by Detlef at Overbeek, who's a really great guy. I talk to Detlef regularly. But I write articles for that magazine because I think it's important. I want everybody to use Delphi or Object Pascal, which is what you're using. no matter what variant they're using. If you're not going to use Delphi, if you're not going to use Rad Studio, at least use Object Pascal, because that's, I think, doing it any other way is doing it the hard way. I mean that. You know, I'm a professional developer. I can write in 9 different programming languages, maybe more, and I've done it for 40 years. I'm a very experienced software developer. Not the best. There are plenty better ones out there, but I still think that of the languages I know, you know, I still think Embarcadero's Delphi is way better, and Object Pascal is as well. So there you go. Okie dokie. All right. Well, I'll see you soon, and thanks very much to everybody. And lots of people saying that they're looking forward to seeing things on Friday. Patrick says Amazon AI. Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that Patrick isn't actually a chatbot. Just joking. I know he isn't. The Patrick bot. I think, didn't you create something called a Patrick bot at some point? But anyway, that's it for now. So I'll see you again next this coming Friday. If you haven't already done it, if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, click on the like button. I know I sound like an influencer, but click on the like button and click on the subscribe button. We won't know who you are. We can't spam you. There's no way of us knowing your name or anything like that. But what will happen is that when we go live, and we're going to start doing some new types of videos, shorter ones, more regularly, sometimes, you know, maybe a whole week of them, you'll get a notification from YouTube every time I go live, and you'll get it in good time. But if you miss it, if you can't see us, at some point when you go to YouTube, it will say, oh, by the way, in your subscriptions, and you'll see the videos that we've done. Not just this webinar series, which is every Tuesday and Friday at the same time, but also some shorts that we've got up. I've got a short from Conrad Vermeulen, who's done something interesting. Richard, I think, is going to do a short as well, although he doesn't know at the moment. We may even do one from Andrea if he feels that way inclined, in English, or I'll dub it in English if he doesn't want to. And you know, those short videos, you will only get to see those if you like and subscribe the video. I'm not too worried about the likes, but the subscribes are more important, because that way we get to reach you with stuff, with information that you want to know about how to use Delphi of every type. The 30 webinars are going to keep going until we reach the 30 every Tuesday and Friday. But until then, I'm going. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, and David I says he's the subscriber. Yay! Oh, bless you, David. You're such a great guy. He's an amazing guy. Andrea says, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you. And I may as well put these comments up as well. Because they're about me. That's very important. The good comments about me come up. Excellent. Thanks very much, everybody. All right. Okay. I will see you on Friday. Same time. See you soon.